Saito is a caring yet boring loser who gets married to a girl who hates him the most. However, once she gets to know him better, she starts acting like an obedient housewife in hopes that he'd let her ride his monster truck. It all starts with Saito walking into his class when he sees Akane, who is both the beauty and the beast. She grabs him by the tie and threatens to end the show in the first episode if he tells anyone about their marriage. 4 days prior, Akane is so far up his ass she could taste what he had for lunch, just because he didn't fill out the class log properly. Saito is annoyed and explains no one in their right mind reads the class log, but her constant nagging makes him realize why women live longer than men. Just then, a blonde named Himori shows up and asks her to let Saito off the hook, displaying her two very good points in the process. She asks why she is always picking on the poor guy, and Akane explains that his face is so hideous, it makes her want to flatten it with the back of her slipper. Soon after, his cousin Shisei shows up and asks why they're fighting, and Saito explains Akane is being a Karen for no reason. Himori believes Akane might have feelings for Saito since she's always picking on him, but she claims she would start waving the pride flag if he was the last man on earth. Saito gets back at her, stating he'd listened to Justin Bieber on repeat instead of dating her. On his way home, he gets a call from his gramps Tenryu to invite him over for tea, who wants him to be an heir to his business. Saito isn't really interested in being successful in life, but the gramps sends some men in black and a limo to pick him up, so he doesn't end up as miserable as he looks. On his way to meet him, he recalls how the Hojo business was about to collapse until Tenryu somehow made it work and turned it into a global high-tech corporation. Even at the age of wearing diapers, he's still sharp as a teenager and works as the head of the company. While waiting for the old man, he runs into Akane and learns she came here because her grandma Chiyo told her to. Without wasting a second, the two of them start arguing until Tenryu arrives in his convertible with Akane's grandma. Despite their initial shock, they head inside where they are served a fancy meal, but Akane keeps chugging in juice because her appetite died as soon as she saw Saito's hideous face. The two start arguing again, and the old farts are happy to see them getting along so well. When Saito asks why they're here, they tell them they're supposed to be married, making their faces look like they found out they're Chiyo's OnlyFans. Tenryu explains how he and Chiyo used to be classmates in love, but fought over silly things just like them, which drifted them apart. Tenryu married someone else, but she died 10 years ago, and so did Chiyo's husband. After living their lives, they can't help but wonder what it would have been like if they stayed together, so they decided to hook up their grandchildren as an experiment. Akane goes on a rant about how marriage is supposed to be between people who love each other, and Saito for once agrees with her and rejects the offer. Tenryu threatens to name the company after a stray dog he found in the slums, but compared to Saito, it's probably the company's best hope.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
On the other hand, Chiyo whispers something into Akane's ear which terrifies her, and they give the young couple 3 days to make their choice. After they leave, Akane and Saito are confused about what to do, and when Saito asks her what Chiyo whispered in her ear, Akane refuses to tell him. Heading home, she calls Himori and asks what she would do if she were forced to marry someone, and Himori says she'll take a stand for herself because she already likes someone. Akane is curious to know who she is talking about, but Himori counters her with the same question. Akane claims she's crush-free unless you count the person she wants to turn into a pancake with her boots. Since she has no one she likes, Himori suggests getting married to split bills and get creamy backshots, which sends Akane into a panic. Meanwhile, Saito can't wrap his head around the joke his life has turned into courtesy of the plot gods. He explains the situation to Shizzy, who asks if he would rather want a free life or inherit the Hojo company. When he reveals he'd like to have both, she gives him a TED talk on how a person can have everything they want. She explains how he could become homeless without the company, and even then she would support him. However, he will need a lot of money to achieve his goals, and choosing the company might be the best option. Later, Saito discusses his plan with Akane, and after 3 days, they tell their grandparents that they decided to get married. Saito states they'll get to the paperwork and the ceremony after graduation, but Tenryu breaks the news that he's already completed the paperwork and even has a separate house ready for them. They reveal they've already transferred their stuff to their new house and leave them to speedrun making babies, much to their shock. Once inside, Saito locks the door like any sane person, but Akane starts panicking thinking he's planning on doing her at the door. After looking around the house and finding their stuff, they realize there's a double bed in the bedroom and call Tenryu, who tells them to share it since they're married. He further tells them not to sleep on the sofas as it's against the rules, making Saito wonder if he has cameras in the living room. Akane starts to panic thinking she's going to be walking side to side for the next few days and picks up a pencil to defend herself like she's a budget John Wick. Later, Sato offers his help in moving her stuff, but she thinks he just wants an excuse to be closer to her. However, Sato saves her from falling down the stairs, explaining how he'd be locked up in jail if she were to die on the first day of their marriage.
FBI, open up!
Later, Sato spots a pre-ordered pizza in the kitchen, and Akane joins him because she's super hungry. He invites her to eat together, but she thinks it's yet another attempt to swipe her V card and runs away with a slice of pizza. At night, Sato gets tired and hits the bed, and Akane hesitantly joins him soon after. Sato's North Pole boils up smelling the shampoo in her hair, but Akane warns her not to think of anything funny if he wants to live through the night. She yaps about how she's never been in a relationship before, but Sato asks her to stop worrying because she's safe. He then asks why she chose to marry him, but Akane refuses to tell him why. She claims it's just a formality, and she has to play along because she wants to make her dream come true. The next day in school, Akane sternly tells Sato to keep his mouth shut if he wants to live, and the man says he has no intention of telling anyone. Akane is so embarrassed about it that she would rather tape a live bomb on her chest and make fireworks of his whole school if anyone finds out she's married to this bum. As they enter the class, Himari asks them what they were talking about in the halls, and Akane says she was telling Sato to take his ugly face away from her. As Sato gets seated, she says he smells a new shampoo on him and asks where he stayed last night. Sato nervously tells her his dad bought a new shampoo, but she says calls bullshit because she can smell a girl's scent on him as well. She knew something was going on and did her research, so now she knows he's married and is living in a separate house. He takes her outside to stop her from spilling the beans, but she demands hush money because he didn't even ask her before smashing another chick. When he asks her what she wants, she can't think of anything and decides to tell him later. After gym class, Akane once again goes back to bullying him for not leaving the equipment in front of the storage room. Sato starts arguing that he left the stuff there because the next class is going to use the same equipment, but Akane finds other things to bitch about, which starts another argument between them. When the whole class gathers to watch their comedy show, Himari reveals they've been fighting so much that it's gotten famous around here. Later at home, Akane complains about the fridge being filled with juice boxes, and Sato confidently claims it was his idea. When she argues that she needs a balanced diet, the guy shows her a cupboard filled with packs of instant ramen. When it comes to protein, Sato introduces him to the concept of protein shakes, but Akane doesn't want to have to deal with artificial food. This starts another argument between the lovebirds, and Sato freakishly admits he spent years ruining his taste buds, so this awful food tastes good to him. Akane realizes this idiot will kick the bucket at his rate, which will be bad for her goal, so she decides to teach him the value of real cooking. As she cooks for Sato, the guy starts to think she's going to poison the food and finish him off for good. Later, Sato is hesitant to eat because this could very well be his last supper, but once he tastes it, it takes him back to his childhood when he used to have homemade meals. He says it's an average homemade meal like he's always wanted, but Akane thinks he's insulting her and snatches the plate away. Sato snatches it back and quickly eats the whole thing, leaving Akane frustrated. The next day, she wakes him up for school, but Sato thinks he's sleeping with Shisei and pulls her in. Akane then smacks him on the head and takes him downstairs, explaining to him that he will have to do the dishes if she cooks dinner. Sato tells her to use the other ones and that he'll wash them at once when they pile up, which frustrates her. Later, she complains about toilet paper cores and soap wrappers in the bathroom. But Sato thinks trash needs to be thrown out only once a month. Akane is a high-maintenance freak who wants the whole house clean, but Sato is a disgusting hermit who thinks bathing is optional.
What?
As they walk to school, Sato reflects on how they see things differently and wonders if living with Akane is even possible. Later at night, Sato is smacking zombies in game to blow off steam when Akane shows up and asks him to keep the volume down. Once she sees the gory game he's playing, she covers her eyes in disgust and tells him to turn it off. Sato refuses to listen to her, claiming it's one of the most popular zombie games in the world. So Akane tries to snatch the controller, which leads to another argument. Amid their struggle, Akane unplugs the console, making the guy look like someone stole his V-Bucks. Once the rest of his stuff is sent over, he realizes every day is war with this crazy bitch, so he hits the shower to prepare for battle. As he enters the shower, he is shocked to find Akane in the bathtub and immediately leaves. However, he then worries she might have passed out and enters again to check up on her. He realizes she's just asleep, but since people can also drown this way, he decides to wake up her by shouting. When she's about to slip in, Saito quickly pulls her out, causing her to fall on him and wake up in horror. Akane thinks he is trying to get his love stick wet and accuses him of unspeakable things, and things go from bad to worse when she realizes he's even got hands-on approach on her no-packs. While dyeing her hair, she is still thinking about the whole thing and wonders if Saito came into the bathroom to stop her from drowning in the tub. As they get into bed, she sums up the courage to ask him, but Saito turns off the lights before she can finish, causing her to stay up crying all night. The next day, Himari notices that Akane seems down in the dumps and checks up on her, prompting Akane to confide in her. She tells Himari that she wants to fix a relationship with a certain someone but doesn't know how to, so Himari suggests hugging it out. When Akane says that's out of the question, Himari tells her to simply talk it out with this person. Akane thinks it's easier for her since she's an extrovert, but Himari explains she also has her fair share of troubles when it comes to making friends. She advises her to show respect before you demand it, and it clicks something in her empty head. Meanwhile, Saito and Shisei are eating waffles outside, and the guy explains how his house has become a complete dumpster fire. She advises him to get divorced, but Saito says it's too late to run away from this commitment because he wants to take over his company. She then suggests she tries to get along with Akane, but Saito thinks it's impossible because they're so different. Shisei says compatibility is a global issue and people overcome it by coming to mutual terms, which is something he has not even thought of doing. Making it work with all sorts of people is something a CEO does, so he must learn to live with her if he wants to run the company. Saito heads home to make things right with Akane, but his mind says nope when he sees her angry face. As he walks by her, she pulls him back and gently asks if they could talk over their issues. She fears they might end up divorced if this keeps up, so she wants to figure out a way for them to get along. Saito doesn't want his life to be miserable as well, so he suggests they set some ground rules in the house. Akane agrees and points out how she's been doing all the house chores, but the guy says he likes to do dishes and laundry once they pile up because it's efficient. When Akane starts complaining about the germs, he remembers Shisei's advice and agrees to do the dishes every day. She then asks him to state his issue, and Saito says he doesn't want to get smacked every time he brushes against her in bed. Akane is a little hesitant at first, but when he reminds her how their bed is small, she says he has permission for a joy ride, but only with pants on. On top of that, she asks him to play his horror games with headphones on so she doesn't piss her pants, and Saito agrees to it. Saito says he read somewhere that verbal gratitude is essential in building up a good marriage, so Akane nervously asks him to compliment her if he likes her food. Later that night, she calls Himura to let her know that even though they aren't close, at least they have hashed it out. Just then, Saito enters the room and she puts herself on display, asking him to touch her to his heart's content. When Saito says he meant touch by accident, her embarrassment is immeasurable. The next day, he walks home with Shisei and lets her know that they're making slow progress toward building a relationship. He then returns home with Akane's favorite strawberry shortcake, explaining he remembers it from her essay in the first year. Akane is pleased to see how attentive he has been towards her and thanks him with a gentle smile, making the guy blush. She then cooks him an elaborate meal to return the favor, and she is delighted when he compliments her cooking. While he's doing the dishes, Akane asks if he needs help, which makes him think he's in a dream. He's not used to this because she's always acting like a cold bitch, but realizes she's pretty cute when she smiles. Later, Saito is reading a book when Akane suggests he finishes it later because she's rented a movie related to cats and was hoping they could Netflix and chill tonight. Saito agrees to watch the movie with her, and while Akane is gushing over how cute the cats are, Saito is unhinged and eventually falls asleep. Once the movie ends, Saito immediately wakes up pretending he watched the whole thing, so Akane suggests they watch a movie of his liking to show her gratitude. Saito says he would prefer a game over a movie any day and offers to teach her how to play. 30 minutes later, she's beating him in the game he taught her to play, and Saito realizes this is fun. That night, Saito covers Akane up before sleeping, and she thanks him for paying so much attention to her. He then suggests she buy the next game they'll play, and he'll look for a movie they can watch. Seeing how formal he's acting, she asks him to call her by her first name, which makes him flustered. The next day in class, Akane has stopped treating him like he's a smell hermit, and Himari immediately picks up on the fact that their dynamic has changed. When Akane says she's overthinking it, Himari assumes they're trying to get along, which confuses Akane so much that she skedaddles out of the classroom. Later, Saito is in the library looking for a book on how to stop being a pathetic loser when he runs into Shies. She asks if he's learned anything from the book, and Saito says teamwork makes the dream work. He then meets Akane in the hallway, but she strictly tells him to keep his filthy hands off her in school. Saito asks if she has any plans with her friends after school, and when she says no, he suggests they go shopping once they're done with the classes. Akane panics, thinking he's asking her out on a date, but so he quickly drags her into an empty room to make sure no one even gets a whiff of their relationship. He then explains that it's not a date but rather an errand because he's gonna need her help in carrying groceries back home. They gaslight themselves into believing it's definitely not a date, and Akane agrees to go with him. After school, she runs into Himari, who suggests they walk home together and even hit Parfait Parlor on the way. She reveals they're serving her favorite dish today, and he can offers to pay for the food. But Akane has to turn her down because she's craving some sloppy toppy today. Himari assumes she's going on a date with someone and takes a wild guess that her partner might be Saito. But when she says it's not a date, Himari suggests the three of them hang out together. Unsure of what to do, Akane decides to run away but steps into Shisei, who had purposely placed herself in her so she would stop. She cryptically asks if she plans on getting Saito's ding-dong, but Akane turns into a nervous wreck and continues to run off. She then waits for Saito at their rendezvous and continues to gaslight herself into thinking this is not a date but rather an errand, and they walk to the nearest convenience store. Inside, they decide to get some eggs, but when Saito randomly picks up a pack, Akane says this other pack costs less than the one he picked and that he should always find a balance between price and quality. Later, they stumble upon a chicken sale, and Akane dives headfirst into the swarm of housewives only to get thrown out. Saito rushes in after her to show he's the alpha of the house but gets the same treatment, making them realize they're both equally pathetic and miserable. The sale ends as they lie on the floor, and despite not getting any chicken, they realize spending time with each other is not bad after all. As they walk home, Saito praises her shopping ability, which will make her a good housewife, but then realizes she's already married to him. At night, Akane wakes up and finds Saito awfully close to her, which sends her into a panic. Saito explains she hugged her from behind when she was asleep, but Akane is sure she is repulsed by how ugly he is even in her sleep. She then asks what he was trying to do, and Saito admits he was trying to poke her cheek because she looks cute when she's asleep. Instead of getting angry, Akane feels flattered and says he is allowed to look at her when she's sleeping. The next day, they both wake up with their brains on hiatus, and while Akane burns her bread, Saito walks around the house wearing nothing but a tie. Later, they visit an ice cream store where they share a large piece of strawberry-filled loaf. Just then, Himari shows up out of nowhere and is amused to see them hanging out outside of school. However, Akane says Saito has been stalking her all day and even ate a piece of bread she threw in the garbage. Later that night, Akane stays up to study for a quiz and learns Saito never studies for exams because he memorizes everything said in class. Akane believes he's calling her stupid for trying so hard and kicks him out of the room. Despite that, he brings her a handmade strawberry sandwich, which turns out to be so tasty that it gives her the energy to stay up all night studying. However, the next day in school, Akane collapses from exhaustion, and when Himari suggests she focus on her health more, Akane sternly says she will get the top grade in class no matter the cost. That night, Saito brings her another strawberry sandwich, but realizes she's already dozed off on the desk. When he approaches her, he sees that Akane is sweating like a pig and even has a high fever. He quickly puts her in bed and wipes her face and arms with a wet towel. But Akane's mind is still hell-bent on studying for the test. Being fever-high, she finally reveals the reason she studies so hard is so she can become a doctor one day and make a cash cow from overcharged medicines.
It's an evil world we live in.
She also reveals her parents don't have the means to put her through medical school, and her grandma promised to fund her education if she married Saito. She believes Saito must feel so good about himself because he can get the top grades even without studying, and even admits she's always admired him. However, she quickly realizes what she said and starts throwing a tantrum. Later that night, her fever skyrockets to 42 degrees Celsius, but Akane doesn't want to call an ambulance because she thinks someone else who needs it more will die. Saito refuses to watch her suffer because of her own stupidity, so he carries her in his own arms and carries her to the nearest hospital. On the way, Akane admires his strength and assumes he'll make fun of her now that he knows what her dream is. However, Saito says he believes in her and that she can be anything she wants in this world on top of being the most insufferable woman alive. Despite being out of each other's throats, the lovebirds finally start to think that they might get a happy ending after all. A few days later, Akane wakes Saito up, and the two immediately start bantering in a playful manner. Saito then reminds her that she admires him and reveals he even has a recording of her admitting it, causing her to run after him to snatch his phone. At school, Imara congratulates Saito for getting a perfect score on the quiz and even starts flirting with him a little. After she leaves, Akane angrily walks towards Saito, but then gently asks him not to get too friendly with other girls because he already has a wife. As she walks away, Saito admits to herself that Akane can be very cute when she's not out to get him. The next day, Saito is hurrying to his class when Akane asks her to stop. He refuses to listen, thinking she'll start talking Japanese, when in reality she just wants to give him a lunchbox. She assumes Saito left it at home because he doesn't like her cooking. But when the guy says he really forgot, she insists he finishes it all up because she made it with hard work. During recess, Saito is about to dig into the lunchbox, but Shisei shows up and tells him to share his entire lunchbox with her. Saito refuses because she's already had a lot in breakfast, but Shisei says a man can never understand a woman's cravings. The two start fighting over the food, and Shisei uses her pretty privileges to turn the whole class against Saito. In the end, Saito agrees to share food with her, but Himari shows up and notes, and he and Akane have the same lunchbox. The whole class starts suspecting that Akane made lunch for Saito, and this further reinforces the rumor of them going to Pound Town every night. They nervously explain to the class that they're not dating, but one of them notes that they've been like a married couple from the very start. Amid the confusion, Shisei eats all of Saito's lunch, but when Saito calls her out for it, she says she merely destroyed the evidence for his sake. She then asks him how things are at home, and if he's getting that shoddy on his love stick at night. Later, Himura jumps in front of Saito to greet him, and when he tells her to watch her step, she says she's sure he'll catch her. As they walk to the class, she asks if Akane really made him lunch, but Saito says Akane just copied his lunchbox. She then asks if he and Akane are dating and gets extremely happy when he says no. After she runs off in excitement, Shisei observes this from afar and realizes Imari's facet starts every time she's around Saito. At night, the couple is in bed when Akane hears some disturbance in the house. She starts screaming, thinking it's a ghost, which wakes Saito up. However, Saito refuses to acknowledge her and goes back to sleep, much to her frustration. Akane can't allow him to sleep and keeps running his mouth until Saito decides to tend to her. When the guy decides to look around the house, she latches onto him and begs him not to leave. The next day, Saito is in his study when Akane walks in all terrified and reveals she heard something running around in the living room. Saito suggests she go back out and take a picture from her phone, but Akane is scared, thinking she'll be possessed by Steve Jobs' ghost. He then asks why she's come to his room, and Akane says she's here to protect him from the ghosts. Later, Saito is in the bathroom, but Akane keeps knocking on the door, begging him to let her in. At night, she returns to the study to let him know that she's going to take a bath and asks him to join her because it's not safe. Hoping for some sloppy toppy, Saito agrees to come with her and later watches her silhouette through the blinds. She keeps talking the entire time to make sure he's there. The next day, Saito spends some time with Shisei, who immediately guesses he's come to her with a suitcase full of marital problems. She explains that everyone needs someone to rely on, and it's okay for them to depend on each other. Saito then explains that Akane keeps talking about a ghost in the house and has made his life a live circus show. Suspecting that there might actually be a ghost in the house, Shisei decides to come and check for herself. Later, she straight up asks Akane if she's married to Saito, stating that nothing goes past her and that she knows they're getting dirty under the sheets. To ensure she doesn't spill the tea on the whole class, the duo carries her to an empty classroom, where Akane gets all furious, thinking it was Saito who told her. Saito pleads that he did not tell her a thing, and Shisei admits that she sure locked it out on her own. Akane then realizes it's okay if San Ito's family finds out and apologizes for not telling her before. Shisei then tells Akane that her house is haunted by spirits and she will be cursed if she does not exterminate them. She further explains that Akane's grades will drop by 50 points in each subject if this goes on, so Akane begs her to help her. That evening, they take Shisei to their house and she says she can feel a cesspool of spirits just from the outside. Akane starts to panic, but Shisei tells her not to worry because she will locate the source and destroy it to dispel the spirits. Inside the house, Saito shows her his study and Shisei accuses him of having books so R-rated even the FBI is ashamed to raid the place. Akane is disgusted to know that he's been going in the library all this time, but Saito says he only reads regular novels. Inside the study room, Shisei finds Saito's undies and starts sniffing them like a creep. She comments that they smell like detergent, but Saito snatches them away from her, before this turns into another episode of Sweet Home Alabama. Following that, she decides to investigate Akane's study, but she insists they skip it because only God knows what Shisei will find in there. She then takes her to their bedroom, where Akane first saw the ghost, and after carefully seeing all 14,605 scenarios, Shisei comes to the conclusion that the ghost they're looking for is none other than her. Turns out, she has been visiting the house for the past few days, and based on all the things she's heard, she suspects they mistook her for a ghost. When they ask why she didn't tell them before, she says she got keys from Tenrya, but sneaked in because she didn't want to interrupt their speedrun of making babies. As a reward for solving the case, Shisei demands they make her dinner because she really enjoyed Akane's homemade lunch in class. She then pampers Akane by saying she's the best chef in the world, when in reality the only thing she can make is a freaking mess. Akane falls for the glazing and makes her an elaborate meal, and when Saito cleans the food on Shisei's face, Akane realizes they're closer than she thought. After dinner, Shisei learns to play a cat game in Saito's lap, but the guy notices that something is wrong with Akane. When he confronts her, Akane says she's completely fine and that she'll pull his teeth out if he asks her again. When Saito decides to hit the shower, Shisei says she will join and reveals she takes a bath with him all the time. However, Akane thinks they're doing a little more than cleaning up in the bath and tells them to go one by one. Later at night, Akane crawls into bed and reveals she had a whole list of complaints she couldn't share in front of Shisei. Saito puts his book away so he can listen, and Akane says she's upset he didn't tell her he bought the cat game. Saito says she was busy with study, and he didn't want to bother her. But Akane says she needs a break every now and then anyway. She wishes Saito had let her play the game first, but Saito jokingly says it's all her plan to get a head start and beat him. This starts a friendly banter between the two of them, and Akane says she can finally sleep peacefully now that she's expressed herself. Saito then asks if that's all she was upset about, and Akane hesitantly admits there is one more thing that's bothering her. She explains she gets a little jealous seeing him and Shisei so close, but then decides to change the topic. She tells Saito to keep his hands away from her rice cakes, but Saito says he isn't touching her at all. Just then, Shisei slips out between the two of them, revealing that she's been here since the dawn of civilization. She reveals she and Saito always slept together in their previous house, explaining that she's been with him since they were kids and that she's the most comfortable around him. She then notices that Akane is not okay with it and decides to leave so they can have a bone zone, but Akane urges her to stay because she's not ready to have her pipes unclogged. At night, while Saito is asleep, she asks Akane if she gets jealous when Saito pays so much attention to her. Akane tries to play it cool, but Shisei can see her blushing and suggests she tells Saito how much she likes him, otherwise he'll never find out. Later, Akane recalls the time when Himari wanted to watch a drama with her and even recorded it, but Akane coldly told her to stay away from her because she had to study. Himari insisted that it's normal to take breaks sometimes, but she hit her with the begone thought. Despite everything, Himari had no sense of self-respect and kept sucking up to Akane, insisting that they go to a cake shop and try the new strawberry parfait. Eventually, she succeeded in convincing Akane to spend time with her, and they became friends from then on. At present, Himari asks her if she gets moist thinking about Saito, because lately she's been herself to sleep thinking of Saito's hideous face. Akane has to pretend not to like Saito, but Himari thinks he's smashed material and recalls this one time when he helped her friend who passed out from a heat stroke. Seeing him so calm in a situation of panic made Himari realize that he's very reliable even when looks like a homeless clown. This reminds Akane of the time he carried her to the hospital, so she can't deny that even when she wants to. Himari says she's noticed that Saito and she have been getting along quite well, so she was hoping Akane could help set them up for a date. Despite being married to the guy, Akane sees how excited Himari is and agrees to set her up for disaster. Himari asks her things about Saito, and Akane realizes that despite breaking beds every night, she doesn't know a thing about that guy. To counter this, she starts stalking him throughout the day and records everything he does like an annoying paparazzi. At dinner, she asks if he has a specific type of woman, but the guy has been so deprived of love he'd sleep with a man if he's wearing a wig. She asks him about his favorite food, and the guy reveals it's steak, sushi, and seafood bowls topped with salmon roe. The next day, Akane tells Himura that Saito likes raw meat and raw garlic, and despite the obvious crazy, Himura is happy because she gets to know a new side of Saito. Akane also tells her he likes playing nasty horror games and reading goon magazines before sleep. Himura finds it weird how Akane knows what Saito does before sleeping, but Akane dodges it by saying she overheard a conversation between Saito and Shisei. At night, Saito asks what's on the menu, and when Akane says fish, Saito says he would prefer eating steak every now and then. She asks why he is expecting steaks, and Saito explains he was looking forward to it because she asked him yesterday. Akane finds it adorable how worked up he gets, so they decide to hit the store to buy raw meat. Later, Akane cooks the steak for Saito, and he ends up liking it a lot, which makes her think it's some kind of a trap. However, Saito is so impressed by it that he wishes she made steak every day. She gets so excited that leans into him and promises to make quality food from now on. The next day, Himura walks up to Saito and asks if he has a specific type, but the guy gives her a TD talk on why that's not healthy. According to Saito, people are too complex to be summed into a type. Himura is so desperate to ride his ding-dong that she pretends to like the way he thinks and explains how most guys who like her don't even put effort into knowing her. Saito comments it must be hard for her to be this pretty, but Himura pretends to be average-looking because she doesn't want to come off as self-centered. After she leaves, Shisei shows up and starts teasing him for lining up shawties on his North Pole. At night, while Saito is busy gaming, Akane sneaks into his study and starts taking notes on the things he keeps there. Saito suddenly walks into the room, and Akane reveals she came here to see what books he's been reading. Saito recommends a book called Human History from the Lens of Food and Weapons, and explains it's written as a mockery of the stupid things humans do. When Himura tries to read it, her TikTok brain can't understand a single word in it. Akane regrets being a bad wingwoman, but Himura tells her not to worry because she has been a huge help in her quest to taste test Saito Jr.
Nice.
Himura then runs into the class to ask Saito if he could explain the book to her, and Akane finally starts to realize that she's becoming a third wheel in her own marriage. Himura apologizes for bothering the guy, but Saito says he likes talking to her because she helps him every time Akane becomes a bother in class. In her attempt to defend Akane, she ends up revealing that Akane told her about his favorite book, but then has to cover it up with the story of how Akane saved her from getting bullied in school because of her hair. Saito comments that many people have fake blonde hair that doesn't even suit them, but they look good on Himura. Meanwhile, Shisei asks Akane if she's bothered by it, and she pretends that she is not. Shisei then reveals Himura has had a crush on Saito since freshman year, and Akane is surprised because she didn't even notice. After school, Himura thanks Akane for the help and even tells her that Saito compliments her blonde hair. She's finally beginning to think Saito wants to clap her cheeks, so she decides to treat Akane with strawberry tarts at her place. Akane quickly realizes her marriage will be exposed and tells her that she can't come over because her house has turned into a swamp. Himura can tell she's lying and assumes she doesn't want her over, so Akane agrees because she doesn't want to break her heart. At home, Saito was shocked to learn of it, and Akane suggests they hide his stuff and use an air freshener in the house so she doesn't recognize her scent. However, Himura shows up way sooner than expected, so he has to hide behind the counter. Later, Himura asks Akane if she's okay with her asking Saito on a date because she has no intention of getting in the way of them. Akane says she has no feelings for an insensitive jerk like Saito, and the guy has to hold back his tears behind the kitchen counter. The next day, Himura sums up the courage to ask him out while Akane and she say wait outside the classroom. Shisei asks her if she's really going to let this happen, and Akane says she has no reason to interfere. Shisei has no intention of interfering, but she advises Akane to accept what she feels. At night, Saito tells Akane that Himura asked her out, but Akane replies in a dismissive way. He asks if she's okay with having an open marriage, and Akane gets furious saying they were forced into this marriage anyway. The next day, Saito dresses up for a date, and Akane is surprised that he's actually going. But Akane then starts to cry and hugs him from the back. She says she doesn't know why, but for some reason it pains her to see him going out with other women. She explains that even when they were forced to marry, they are still husband and wife, and she cannot see him pursuing other women while being married to him. Saito then says that's what he had hoped to hear and reveals he has rejected Himori. Akane is furious at first, but then he asks her out on a date and promises to buy her a ring to make up for toying with her. The next day, Himori meets Saito with a big smile, and the guy can't believe she got over him so soon. Himori explains she still wants to ride his roller coaster and that she will keep trying until he folds. She recalls how Akane turned her down day after day, but it was her persistence that led to their friendship. Similarly, she'll keep simping for Saito until he finally gives in and starts to fall in love with her. Just then, Shisei shows up and says she won't let anyone close to Saito without her approval, and 10,000 melon buns might just make her accept Himori. Himori is excited about the future, but Akane is watching from a distance and promises to herself that she won't let Saito slip away from her. Later, Himori hits him with a dish made of raw meat and garlic because Akane told her that's what Saito likes. She insists that Saito tries at least a little bit, and the whole class gets on his back urging him to taste it. In the end, Himori shoves her meat into his mouth. It turns out to be surprisingly tasty. Akane steps in and tells him to eat his own lunch as well, but Himori starts to think she's jealous and decides to feed her as well. Later, Himori asks Saito to teach him some math, and when the guy agrees, she invites him over to her place. She reveals her parents are gone for the day, so he can give her as many back shots as he wants. When Himori continues to flirt with him, Akane steps in and tells her it's dangerous to be alone with Saito because he smashes harder than Hulk on steroids. However, Himori is all in for the claps and gets moist thinking about it. Akane is hellbent on making sure Himori stays a virgin like most of you guys watching. So Himori invites her over for group therapy. While she is at it, she also invites Shishi over and decides to arrange the study session at Akane's house. Later, Himori, Shisei, and Saito arrive at her place and Saito takes the lead. He asks Himori when her struggle with math started, and she reveals she's been bad at it since the first grade. However, Akane reveals Himori's grades dropped in the middle of the first year, so Saito starts teaching her from that section. After a while, Himori starts to get the hang of it and blazes Saito for being better than her school teachers. As she stumbles up to him, Akane starts fuming like a hot kettle, so Shisei suggests they take a break from studying. She introduces them to a card memory game, and Akane wants to beat Saito in it for getting so up close with Himori. However, Saito wins by a landslide and leaves to get some snacks for the group. Akane decides to go with him and says she is impressed by how good his memory is even outside of school. Saito reveals everyone in their family has one skill maxed out, and while his skill is sharp memory, Shisei can calculate large amounts of data in seconds. There have been times when he has been treated like an Ohio resident for memorizing the personal stuff of others. He believes he'll now lose all aura in front of Akane, but she shocks him by wishing her memory was as good as his. Not only will it help her in their studies but also in being considerate towards others. Later, they return home with snacks but are shocked to see Himori and Shisei playing that nasty zombie game on Saito's console, which is the only thing Akane forgot to hide. During tea, Himori thanks Saito for the help and Saito says he had fun too because she catches on quickly. Hearing that, Himori suggests they hold another study session, but this time at his place, but Saito quickly turns her down. She starts teasing him thinking he's nervous about having a woman over but accidentally spills tea on her shirt. Saito instinctively reaches for the drawer with a towel, and Himori thinks he's a genius for guessing which drawer had towels in it. After Himori leaves to clean off, Akane accuses Saito of trying to taste test Himori's insides. She complains how he never helps her study, but Saito reminds her of the time she yelled at him when he tried. Just then, the lights go out and Akane quickly snuggles up to Saito because she's too scared of the dark. Saito wants to check the breaker, but she won't leave her side like a stubborn little brat. She then asks if he likes girls who are not stubborn, but Saito tells her she's fine the way she is. Saito expresses how she comes off as a stubborn girl who can't seem to express herself properly, but he knows she doesn't mean any harm by it. He admits Akane can be a drag, but he's slowly beginning to like her for the way she is. Just then, the light comes back and so does Himori, who quickly comments on how Akane is all up close with Saito. The next day, Himori asks Akane to arrange another study session with Saito, but she says she has nothing to learn from this acoustic idiot. However, once Himori leaves, Akane gently asks Saito to help her study once they get home. At night, Saito gives her tips on how to memorize stuff, dubbing it his dummy's guide to memorize everything for people with low IQs. He then tells her to hit the bed, but Akane insists she has to study all night. Saito asks why she studies so hard to begin with, and Akane tells him it's none of his business. However, Saito brings out inner Joey Tribbiani and tells her he wants to learn more about her miserable life. She finally reveals she used to have a younger sister who was always sick, and her parents had to work day and night to cover her hospital bills. All she could do was stand by and watch her suffer, which made her feel terrible. She could not save her sister, but there are many suffering just like her. So if Akane can save one life, she can finally forgive herself for the past. Later, she comments on how it must be nice for Saito to have a younger sister like Shisei, making him realize she's really down. Saito immediately heads to the smartest person he knows and asks for her advice. He tells her what happened, and Shisei says she always feels better when she goes out shopping with Saito. Shisei has also noticed that Akane is a girly girl who likes cute dresses and sweets, so she suggests asking her out. Saito returns home and asks if she'd like to go out on the weekend, and Akane is so shocked by it that she burns the stew. Later, she meets Chiyo, who can immediately tell something is off about her, so Akane tells her Saito asked her out. She wants to know if it's a date, and Chiyo starts crying tears of joy, because her granddaughter is finally going to get her V-card swiped. Chiyo shows her a wardrobe full of dresses that she has been collecting for Akane's special day, which embarrasses her. Despite that, she dresses up like a 3-milk cake with chocolate topping for their supposed date, which makes Saito's loins burn. Saito then takes her to a cat cafe, but she says she's not allowed in here, making him wonder what she did to get permabanned. He instead takes her to a karaoke room, but Akane thinks he's planning on hitting her vocal cords with his ding-dong instead of singing. She learned from Himera the couples usually end up kissing inside karaoke rooms, but Saito assures her they're here just to sing. After blowing their throats up, they hit a lemonade joint and Akane starts feeling over the moon. She then asks why he asked her out, and Saito explains he wanted to make her feel better after he made her bring up her sister. Akane is so moved by this gesture that she agrees to go anywhere with him, and of course, he takes her to a supplement store to overdose on vitamins. After stuffing his face with protein powder, the couple returns home, but Akane's eye catches an expensive ring. However, she does not have enough money to buy it as a high schooler, so she vows to become a doctor and get everything she wants. As they walk home, Akane thanks Saito for cheering her up with a smile, and the guy admits he'd totally fall for her if she smiled more. The next day, Saito casually eats a rolled omelet while watching TV, but Akane is upset because she wants him to compliment her cooking. In school, he tells Shisei he wants to stop by her place to hang out with her. Later, her driver Rue comes to pick them up in a limo.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
And they arrive at Shisei's giant mansion. She starts changing in front of Saito,
FBI, open up!
and later suggests they play a vampire game, which naturally involves her sucking her blood, but something tells the guy it'll be more than that. Just then, Shisei's mother walks in and starts nagging him, because she wants her share of the guy as well. She even asks Saito to stay for dinner, but he has to be home before night or Akane will set the whole place on fire. Saito then asks if he can help her out in her company, and she questions why doesn't he talk to his grandfather about it. Saito says he doesn't want to owe the old man anything and wants to make money on his own so he can buy a gift for Akane. Shisei gets upset after realizing he came here to buy a gift instead of playing with her, but Saito starts making excuses. Her mother tells him to stop looking for a part-time job and act like the future CEO of the Hojo family. She also does not approve of his marriage to a filthy casual like Akane, because deep inside, she wants him to marry Shisei. She then tells the guy that there is a vacancy in the localization department where they need someone to translate some absurd language. She asks if he can master it in 3 days, and Saito claims he can get it done overnight. Returning home, Saito begins studying, which upsets Akane, because she instead wants him to clap her.
Okay.
When Akane starts asking questions, the guy tells her to mind her business because he wants to buy that ring for her as a surprise, but Akane gets furious with his tone. The next day, Himari notices that he's going back with Shisei 2 days in a row, and Akane pretends she doesn't care. At their home, Shisei sits on his lap while he's working, so she could feel his ding-dong.
Bombastic side-eye.
He asks if she is jealous of the fact that he's buying a gift for Akane, but Shisei says she understands that he has to do this to win her over. However, ever since Akane has given him a sloppy toppy, he's started to ignore Shisei's needs, which has made her feel lonely. He asks Shisei what he can do to make it up to her, so she makes him cuddle her to sleep. Arrive home, he is welcomed by his lovely wife who asks why he is late, but Saito refuses to tell her. Akane smells a woman's perfume on him, making her wonder if he's got any side chicks besides her. The next day, she meets Grandma Chiyo to discuss her worries but still keeps pretending that she does not care even if Saito builds a harem of baddies. Chiyo can see through her mask and sees her old self in Akane. Later, she meets Himari, who cries over getting rejected by Saito once again. Just then, Shisei passes by and Akane smells the same perfume on her that she smelled on Saito last night. At home, she waits for Saito to return, but remembers Chiyo telling her to accept her true feelings. Since she doesn't have Saito's phone number, Akane calls Shisei's landline to inquire when he will return home. However, Shisei's mother picks up the call and tells her that Saito cannot come to the phone right now. Akane says she will only take a second, but the woman rudely tells her that their marriage is a fraud, and she shouldn't ever worry about what Saito's doing. Meanwhile, Saito finally finishes his task and gets his paycheck from Shisei's mother. She asks if Akane knows why he's coming here, and Saito says he's kept it a secret from her. That night, Saito visits the store to buy the ring that Akane likes and returns home to a not-so-warm welcome from his wife. She starts accusing him of clapping Shisei behind her back and suggests he marries her instead. Saito tries to clear up the misunderstanding, but Akane tells him not to come home at all and that she will manage everything alone. Before she leaves, Saito shows her the ring and tells her he was working at her aunt's company so he could get it for her. Akane asks why he did this, and Saito says he did it as a sign of peace, which makes her nervous. The next day, he wakes up beside her, and Akane happily shows him the ring on her finger. She asks if he will be late again tonight, and Saito tells her he's finished with the job. That night, Akane is so happy she's ready to make babies with him
Bombastic side-eye.
and even cooks him a ton of steak, which makes the guy sick. The next day, Akane wears the ring to school and Saito has to drag her to a discreet location before Himari suspects anything. He tells Akane to be careful with it, so Akane puts it in her pouch. However, Shisei sees the ring and asks if she can have it, but Akane refuses because it's special to her. When she returns home and checks her bag, the pouch is nowhere to be seen, so she retraces her steps back to the school to look for it. After failing to find it, she decides not to tell Saito because he worked so hard to get it for her. Even the next day, she keeps looking around but fails to find it until she runs into Shisei in the park. Shisei knows what's up, so she promises not to tell Saito, and even offers her help to look for the ring. She says she wants Saito to be at peace, which makes Akane realize how much she cares about him. Shisei admits she loves Saito a lot and helps Akane look for it all over the place. The two fail to find it and walk home at night in disappointment. Shisei then suggests Akane talk to Saito about it because he has a sharp memory and might remember where he last saw it. However, Akane starts to tear up and refuses to tell to him. Meanwhile, Saito is waiting for Akane to return, but Shisei shows up in her place and can immediately smell Akane's special seafood curry. Saito asks her about Akane's whereabouts, but Shisei refuses to tell him because she promised to keep the whole thing a secret from him. The next day, Saito begins following her after school and finally realizes what she's up to. Later, as Akane cries in the rain like a miserable loser, Saito approaches her and tells her to come home because they can always get a new ring. Akane says she cannot just buy back the same ring, but it was a real gift, unlike this marriage which is a faker than a YouTube apology video. Saito worked really hard to buy it and show her that he wanted to get along. As she begins sobbing, Saito understands how much it means to her and agrees to help look for it. He recalls every single thing they did after school that day and eventually arrives outside a grocery store where Akane opened her bag once. Seeing a drain nearby, he sticks his hand in it and actually manages to find the pouch. Akane is so happy that she embraces him and starts thanking him with tears in her eyes. Saito then puts the ring on her finger. The next day, Saito is reading a book in the schoolyard when a pink-haired girl approaches him and calls him senpai. He does not recognize her, so she introduces herself as Maho and says she wants to spam the jump button on his joystick. She then starts asking why he turned down Himari even though she's packing huge melons, but then answers her own question, saying it's because he lives with Akane. Saito is shocked and asks how he knows about their situation, but Maho says she knows everything about him, down to the size of his ding-dong.
Are you sure about that?
She then asks him out again and reminds him that she can turn his world upside down, even if he doesn't do as she says. Saito quickly covers her mouth before she can spill the beans, but she mistakes it as his attempt to kiss her and leans in. Just then, Shisei kicks her away and vows to protect her brother from girls in ovulation. However, Malo comes back and starts cuddling Shisei, thinking she looks like a cute little doll. After Maho leaves, Shisei tells Saito to be careful, because this girl is freakier than your mom. In class, Saito notices Shisei, Himari, and Akane leave and is happy because he can finally be alone. However, Maho shows up in his class and starts calling out his name. The boys look at the guy in anger because he's collecting shawties like Pokemon, so he drags Maho away before things go out of hand. He asks Maho why she likes him, but when she says it is love at first sight, he calls BS because no one's falling for a guy whose face looks like a before picture in a skincare ad. Maho then carelessly slides down the stairs and Saito catches her in his arms. He tells her to be safe, but she says life's too short to worry about protection, and she'd rather have it raw. Later, she guesses that Saito doesn't really like Akane despite living with her, and after Saito confirms it, she tells him to date her instead. Later, she heads to McDonald's and gobbles up a giant burger, just like your mom gobbles up a stranger's juice. She then explains that she loves junk food and cup ramen, but her family always forces her to eat homemade food. Saito says he also has someone who urges him to eat homemade food, but it's likely for their own good. Maho then reveals she also has an older sister, but Saito could already tell because her whole persona speaks younger sibling. The two then start complimenting their own sisters until Maho notices burger sauce on his finger and starts sucking it clean. She also takes a picture on her phone so they can relive their memory when in reality, it's just for blackmailing him. Saito chases after her to make her delete the picture and finds her sitting outside the restaurant, all sweaty and out of breath. After she pretends to delete the picture, he asks her to come to the shopping district with her, and Maho is surprised at how calm he is. After showing her around, Saito asks her to return home, but she says she wants to come over to her place and have him clap her first.
Bombastic side eye.
When Saito refuses, she starts gathering attention by yelling and vowing to tell everyone that he lives with Akane. Eventually, Saito agrees to take her home, but fears Akane would make him sleep on the couch. When Akane opens the door, Saito tries to explain the situation, but learns that Maho is actually Akane's younger sister. Maho quickly embraces Akane and says she has been missing her ever since she moved out. She then starts squeezing her milk packs and says they have gotten bigger, but Akane pushes her away. Saito is confused because he was under the impression that her sister is dead, but Akane only recalls telling her that she went far away. Maho then reveals she is always traveling the world on grandma's money, which is why she can't see Akane as much as she used to. Since she is already here, she now wants to observe their marital life and starts by going into their bedroom. Seeing two pillows on the bed, Maho realizes they sleep together and assumes Akane has gotten her V-card swiped already. She starts scolding Saito for popping her sister, but Akane tells her that nothing has ever happened between them. Maho asks if they have ever kissed or held hands, but Akane makes it clear that she gags at the sight of Saito. To prevent any funny business, Maho decides to stay at the house and watch them. Akane invites her to stay for as long as she likes and decides to make porridge to celebrate Maho's homecoming. Maho gets hit with PTSD after hearing about porridge and explains it's all she had growing up because she was always sick. Akane then opens the fridge to fetch the ingredients but screams when she finds Shisei frozen inside. Seeing Maho around, she cannot understand why she's calling Saito Oni-chan because she's supposed to be his only sister. When Maho tries to replace her, Shisei gets possessive and challenges her to a duel to decide who is worthy of being by Saito's side. The two of them engage in different games to see who can win Saito over, and Shisei wins by a long margin. In the end, Maho decides to let Saito go because she already has the best elder sister in the world. Later, Akane asks her why she didn't inform her about her arrival, and Maho says she wanted to give her a surprise. Maho then gets down to business, stating she is aware of why Akane married Saito, despite not liking him one bit. If educational funds are all that is on the line, Maho offers to marry Saito instead and promises to convince grandma to keep paying for Akane's studies. Akane tries to change Maho's mind by telling her all the things she hates about Saito, but Maho is indifferent and says Saito is just the type of guy she likes. She even shows her the picture they took earlier and explains she and Saito get along pretty well. Akane pretends to be okay with Maho stealing her husband and lets her play her cards. But once she leaves the room, Akane starts to feel conflicted about it. Meanwhile, Saito is in the bathtub when Maho walks in and offers to wash his back. Saito tells her to get out, but she threatens him by saying she will tell Akane he tried to attack her. Having no other choice, Saito agrees to let her wash his back. As she gets in the tub, she tells Saito that he should marry her instead because she is the committed type who would let him clap her anytime he wants. She keeps persuading Saito with all the things she can offer that Akane doesn't, and the guy tries really hard to hold himself back. Later, he appears exhausted and tells Akane that Maho is acting like a spoiled brat. Akane says she has been hospitalized pretty much her entire childhood, so it makes her happy to see her sister have fun in life. As Saito lies down to sleep, Akane asks if he wants to break up with her, which leaves him confused because he doesn't know what he wants. The next day, the Volt gang arrives at an amusement park to celebrate Maho's homecoming, but Himari doesn't understand why Maho is acting so cozy around Saito. Maho tells her she has her eyes on Saito's Excalibur.
Here we go again.
Which starts a rivalry between the two. After swimming in the pool and going ice skating, the group takes a roller coaster ride which turns Maho into a colorless manga panel. As they take the Ferris wheel, Akane starts crying because she's way too scared and believes whoever built these rides was truly evil. Saito asks why she came here if she hates all the rides, and Akane, it's because she wanted Maho to have fun. She yaps about how Maho never left the bed when she was young, so she will bear some terror if it means making her sister happy. Despite putting on a strong front, Maho is terrified underneath, so Saito places his hand on top of hers to comfort her. Later, they head to a haunted house, and while Akane cries outside, Maho is unfazed and starts taking pictures with the ghosts. Just then, she suddenly drops to her knees and tells Saito that she is not feeling well. Saito carries her outside and tells her to rest on the bench while he fetches Akane. However, Maho springs back up and says it was all just an act to make him carry her. Saito scolds her for faking such a serious thing and tells her that people might not believe her when she's actually sick. That night, Saito is looking forward to a good night's sleep, but Maho pops out and sits on top of him. Surprised, Saito asks if she ever attended one of his grandparents' titty parties, because he clicked with someone who looked a lot like her. Maho admits that the girl he talked to for hours was her and starts unbuttoning his shirt so she can spam jump on his joystick. When Saito protests, she says it's fine because she loves him, but Saito says her words have no weight, unlike Akane's. Maho then admits that she actually hates him, but despite that she still wants him to use his drill on her. Saito can't understand why she wants to break beds with someone she hates, but Maho continues to pressure him into doing the deed with her. Just then, Akane walks in on the two, and in her shock, she tells them that she hates them both. After getting kicked out, Saito decides to leave the house and stay at a hotel for the night, and Maho forcefully tags along even when he doesn't want her to. Arriving at the hotel, Saito books a room for himself alone, but Maho keeps bothering him like. Eventually, the guy lets her in, and she starts to cry thinking he now hates her too. Saito realizes Maho is hurt, and she explains that Akane never ever scolded her, even when she pulled pranks on her. This is the first time Akane tells her she hates her, and Maho believes she will never get to talk to her again. She then suddenly takes off her shirt and tells Saito that she will make it up to him by giving him a sloppy toppy. However, Saito turns her down and cuddles her to sleep like he cuddles Chisei. The next day, Maho starts getting sick because she didn't take her meds last night, explaining that she didn't have the time after Akane kicked them out. Saito wants to call an ambulance, but she tells him not to because her doctor told her she can live without meds, which means she has to power through this one. Later, Saito takes her to the hospital, and she tells him not to bother Akane with her problems. He asks what she will tell her parents, and Maho says she'll tell them she collapsed from exhaustion. She further explains how Akane could not make any friends when she was younger, because she had to take care of her, so she no longer wants to bother her. Saito agrees and lets her stay at the hospital while she calls Chisei to inform her that he will be living at her place for some days. At school, Akane sternly asks Saito where Maho is because her parents aren't telling her, and Saito angrily tells her to go bother her parents. Akane assumes they're close and Maho must have told him something, but Saito says they're not close and enters the class. After school, Saito visits Maho at the hospital and asks how she travels so much despite her condition. Maho says she does not know when will be her last day on this planet, so she powers through to make the best of her life. On top of that, Akane doesn't have to worry about her when she's traveling abroad, which allows her to focus on her own life. Saito then understands why Maho secretly dislikes him, and it's not because he stole Akane from her. Maho reveals she would often hear about him because Akane hated him for always being so nonchalant and scoring the highest. Once she got married to him, Maho thought she was miserable and tried to take her spot just to make her happy. However, her plan backfired and her own sister said she hated her. Saito assures her that Akane still loves her and she should go see her once she is discharged from the hospital. Saito replies that he wants to make Akane happy too, and it would break her heart if her sister wasn't taken care of properly. Maho says Akane has the cutest smile she's ever seen, and Saito tells her she should see her when she's getting clapped. Just as he exits the room, he realizes Akane had followed her and was eavesdropping on their conversation this entire time. Akane suddenly runs away, but is overwhelmed by how much Saito cares about her. Later, Maho apologizes to her for everything and explains why she was trying to take Saito away from her. She tried to force it by having Saito give her back shots, but the guy was so uptight wouldn't lay a hand on her. She then begs Akane to forgive Saito because it's not his fault, and Akane tells her to stop sacrificing her own life for her sake. Later, Saito approaches her in the class to apologize, but she's upset because her best friend and her sister both went to break beds with him. She then asks if what he told Maho at the hospital is true, and Saito admits he meant everything he said. Akane then gently asks him to come home because she doesn't want to worry Granny. Just then, Himari enters the class and realizes that her suspicion is true and Akane does in fact live with Saito. One day, Saito was sitting alone in the park when Himari approached and asked why he was here. Saito replied that both his parents are at home today, so he's touching grass to avoid interacting with his dysfunctional family. She told him she had the same problem and sat beside him so he didn't feel lonely. At present, she is shocked to learn that Saito and Akane are living together, and everyone in class starts talking about it. Akane frantically tells everyone that she won't touch Saito with a 10-foot pole, let alone live with him, but no one seems to believe her.
Stop the cap.
Before things go from bad to worse, Saito drags her outside and the two start to blame each other for letting their secret out. The next day, Saito looks like he only had Akane's kitty for dinner, but Shisei tells him not to worry because the rumor will die down in around 200 years. As he walks home with Shisei, he realizes his classmates are following them with their phones out. To avoid getting caught, Shisei invites him to her place, but Saito rejects the offer because his grandfather is getting sussy. Shisei suggests they take the bus until the final stop to lose the stalkers, but they end up in an unknown place with no signal. As they contemplate walking home, a car arrives to pick up Shisei, revealing that there is a tracking device implanted in her. The car then drives away with her, leaving Saito to walk home alone. The next day, the lovebirds run out of groceries, but are terrified to leave home because they fear running into classmates. Shisei, with a bowl of rice in front of her, suggests they eat cake instead, and Saito says she's the reason they're low on food. Just then, they hear a thud upstairs and check every room until they find someone hiding in their bedroom. Akane quickly grabs a baseball bat to beat the intruder to death, but Saito stops her, causing them both to fall on the bed. Just then, Maho reveals herself and starts shouting that Akane and Saito are going to pound town in the middle of the day. They ask Maho why she is here, and she brings out Himari, who wants to talk to Akane. Himari apologizes for letting her secret out, but Akane says it's their fault for not telling her in the first place. Even Saito apologizes to her, but Himari tells them not to worry because he sort of already knew they were living together. She explains how their hair smell alike, they have the exact same lunch, and given how well Saito knows his way around the place, she figured they married for business and kept it a secret. Saito then explains how their grandparents married them to relive their childhood love, making Himari think there are no feelings between Saito and Akane. Later, they hold a meeting to discuss how to stop the rumor, and Himari suggests confusing people by making Saito and Akane do the opposite of what couples do. The next day, Saito and Shisei pretend to be a couple, but it fails because everyone is already used to seeing them close. Shisei suggests he ups the notch by kissing her on the lips, but Saito says he won't do it even for $1 million. Later, Maho offers to be his fake girlfriend next, but Saito turns her down because Shawnee is too freaky for him. That only leaves Himari, who has been praying for this day since episode 5. Later, Akane gives a stern warning to Saito, reminding him that his relationship with Himari is just acting, so he best keeps his sausage in wraps. When Saito asks if it's okay to kiss or hug Himari, Maho starts boiling up and tells him he'll have to pay for everything he does. The next day, Himari starts acting like Saito's girlfriend and catches everyone's attention in class. After lunch, she drags Saito to a discreet room to so further sell their fake relationship. But once she steps into the room, she starts to get nervous. Saito is amused to find her in this state, but says he is down to do whatever she wants as long as it's acting. Himari nervously asks him to cuddle her like he cuddles Shisei, and Saito agrees to let her sit in his lap. Even though Himari can feel her North Pole rising, she tells him to keep acting because people are sneakily watching them. When Saito hugs her tightly, they hear girls gossiping outside the room, so Himura tells her to keep hugging her. Later, the girls corner Himura and ask what she's up to, and Himura tells them that she and Saito are dating. When people ask her about Akane, she says she got jealous when she saw him getting friendly with Akane, and blurted out that they were living together even though it was a lie. The whole class apologizes for the trouble they've caused and celebrates the new couple in their class, leaving Akane heartbroken. After class, Akane tells Himura she might be taking it too far with the PDA, but Himura believes her plan is working perfectly and dismisses her concerns. Later, they go on a pretend date, and while Himura is in a great mood, Saito apologizes for dragging her into this mess. After spending a whole day together, Saito walks her home and is about to leave, only for Himura to invite him in for a cup of tea. Saito thinks it's a bad idea and walks off, leaving Himura in a state of despair. However, he notices the sorrow on her face and comes back, filling Himura with joy. Inside, Saito notices a picture of him on Himura's study table, and she frantically hides the fact that she slaps her kitty to it every night. As he waits for the tea, he notes that Himura has several psychology books in her room and wonders if she pretends to be dumb to score a BBC. Soon after, Himura arrives with tea and shows Saito that everyone in their class group is talking about them. Saito is shocked to see her plan work so efficiently and credits all the books she's been reading. Himura's mood shifts and she reminds him that she was bullied some years ago. Even though it stopped because of Akane, she didn't want to rely on her anymore and read books on how to stop people from getting under her skin. She believes it's silly, but Saito praises her for thinking of her best friend, even when she is in pain. Himura then asks if his Excalibur awakens at the thought of Akane, and Saito says he doesn't think of Akane in that sense. Himura is delighted to hear this and wonders if she still has a chance with him, but Saito is unsure of his current situation. She says that her parents won't return as long as she is here, and Saito says their family situation is the same because his parents were never there as well. He then decides to leave, but Himura begs him to stay a little longer, because it gets lonely for her. That night, Akane gets upset when she learns that Saito was alone with Himura at her place. Later, Himura calls her to make sure Saito returned safely and happily tells Akane how he ate plenty at her place. Akane is visibly sad and asks Himura to pipe it down because the rumor has stopped, but Himura fails to understand her feelings and says she will continue to act like his girlfriend. She then asks Akane if it bothers her, and Akane says she's fine with it, even though she clearly isn't. The following night, Saito realizes he doesn't even have Akane's phone number and asks her for it, but she panics thinking he's hitting on her. Saito then explains it's better, because that way she can text him that she needs something, but she still keeps thinking he's trying to tap her. Akane finally agrees and Saito says he was hesitant to ask her, because she would have labeled him as a creep. She then reveals he's the first guy on her contact list, and she will save him with a different name so others don't find out. Saito confidently says she should write Almighty King, but Akane quickly makes him realize how much aura he just lost with this. Later, she sends him a good evening text and starts blushing, which creeps Saito out. She keeps texting him while they're in the living room, then leaves in excitement and calls him from the other room, much to Saito's frustration. The next day, Saito is having lunch with Shisei when Maho ambushes him and annoys him by saying she wants to ride his monster truck.
Bombastic side eye.
However, Saito sternly asks her to tell him about the girl he met at the party, promising to do anything in return. Shisei asks what he hopes to achieve with the information, and Saito says he is just curious. He recalls being invited to the party and remembers that the girl was kind and gentle, which is the exact opposite of Akane. As Maho begins pestering him again, Shisei quickly asks her out on a date, stating she needs to talk in private. The two skedaddle instantly, and Saito sees a text from Akane complaining that he left the curtains open. At home, he gets a call from Tenryu, but doesn't pick up, so the old man calls him on the TV. He then reveals they're celebrating his cousin's 70th birthday next weekend, and since she is an important member of the company, Saito has to attend and get along with her. As Akane enters the room, Saito fills her in and asks her to come with him, because he has to introduce his wife to the family. Akane starts to panic, as if she isn't already his wife, but Saito assures her that it'll be a casual meetup. However, Saito tells him that Shisei's family will attend too, and Akane doesn't want to face her mother Reiko after that phone call. He says he won't be able to come home that night, and that she might be scared, but Akane gets defensive and says he will just invite Himura over. On weekend, Saito leaves in a limo while Akane watches him drive away in desperation. Later, he arrives at the place with Shisei and Reiko, and they are given a warm welcome. At the party, Saito and Shisei bring presents to the woman of the hour Shizu. And when Tenrya asks about Akane, Saito says she's too shy to meet them yet. The old fart starts urging Saito to have Akane jump on his joystick, but Shizu tells him not to bother the young with such topics, seeing how she's the only one he listens to. Saito asks her to scold him for forcing his marriage, but Shizu says Tenrya made the right decision because Akane's family is influential. However, she always assumed Saito would marry Shisei, which surprisingly makes her face go red. When confronted, she makes excuses claiming she ate a lot of red peppers, when in reality she's getting moist from the thought of Saito giving her back shots. Later, Saito tells Shisei to take it easy, but she punches him in the face and demands he give her head pats. Meanwhile, Imori comes over to Akane's place and immediately hugs her, relieved that Akane doesn't hate her, even after what she did. Akane says she can never hate her, and whatever she does is to help her, which makes Himori happy. Later, the two bake cups and share joy over tea, and Himori immediately snaps a picture of the cupcakes for Saito. Akane feels cheated knowing Saito had Himori's number before hers, but then snaps out of it telling herself she doesn't care. Himori starts to worry and asks if she wants her to delete his number, but Akane says it's fine. Himori then shows her the goon material she's been sending Saito, hoping he'd finally give in and explore her chamber of secrets. However, Saito is a tough guy who just ignores all her messages. Seeing them interact on a regular basis makes Akane a little sad, and Himori realizes that Akane is not indifferent to Saito as she claims to be. After Himori leaves, Akane tells herself that she can finally study in peace and quiet and get a higher grade than Saito, but she keeps checking her phone hoping he'll leave her a message. Meanwhile, Shisei falls asleep in Saito's lap, and Tenrya shows up all drunk asking him to take a shot as well. Ignoring his schemes, Saito carries Shisei to the bedroom, and her maid asks him to sleep here as well because it will make Shisei happy. She suggests he finally swipes Shisei's V card. But when Saito decides to sleep in the next room, he calls him a loner virgin. She then immediately goes back on her word. Later, Saito gets a call from Akane, who jokingly asks if she wants to hear his voice, which flusters her. Akane says she called because the woman in her is dying to yell at him, and then gently asks him to come home soon. That night, Akane cuddles up a teddy bear and even puts on headphones to avoid getting scared, but she loses her mind when she hears some noise outside the window. She's about to slam the intruder with a frying pan, but then realizes it's Saito climbing up from the window. He explains he couldn't come from the front door because she's chained it up, and she didn't hear the intercom because she was wearing headphones. She then asks why he didn't stay the night like he planned, and Saito says he took a bus and then walked for 2 hours because he missed her yapping. They both start blushing, and then Saito leaves to take a shower. Later, Akane notes that his clothes are dirty, which means he really put an effort into coming to see her. After washing off, Saito enters the bedroom and sees Akane in a really good mood. He then asks why she was peeping in the bathroom, which leads to another argument. Saito decides to hit the bed, but then Akane gently asks her to stay up for a while and tell her everything that happened at the party. Turns out, Saito is actually up and in shock because Akane's voice just reminded him of the girl she met at the party all those years ago. That's it for this video. Leave a like and comment which anime you want us to cover next. If you want more recaps like this, watch this video here.